We saw in your last images, the coastline is a very important part of Lebanon. I mean, it's one big coastline, basically, almost. Ole Moystad, Norwegian architect, having lived in Beirut for a long time, came up with a very brilliant and important idea to use this coastline, and he will now tell us about it.
First of all, I want to thank you all for inviting me and for the initiative to the Pearl Foundation and the Archis Foundation and the Partisan Public. I think it's an absolutely wonderful initiative, and after listening to so many brilliant interventions, it's you feel kind of redundant almost. I'm here with two hats. One is as a professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. The other is as a partner in an architectural firm, together with my business partner down there, Eti. And together we have been discussing this concept about the coastline, which is in fact an urban concept, the way we think of it. There are a few comments that I would like to share with you in the beginning about the fantastic role, let's say, of a city as Beirut and its importance also on a European scale, because there was actually here in Beirut, not so far from where this picture is taken, but actually in the downtown of Beirut, there was also a Roman law school. And at that Roman law school, which was the only actual Roman law school in Roman times, the Lex Romana was written. And if it's not true, it's at least a plausible assumption that the Treaty of Rome is largely based on this set of laws. There's also another touch of irony, one might say, that in Beirut there is one university. There are many universities, brilliant universities, but in Beirut there's one university which boasts of having more alumni among the heads of state that signed the Treaty of Human Rights, the UN Treaty of Human Rights. 6 heads of states are alumni from Beirut. That's more than any other place in the world. So when going down there, it was with a certain awe and respect that we went, my partners, also my wife and myself, and facing students there. I was hired at the American University to teach architecture and urban design. We went in 1994. And one of the first things I started talking to the students about was obviously public space. And it did not take me very long before I understood. I started making the calculations because somehow I didn't seem to get through to them the references of urban space, the references of understanding urban space, seemed kind of absent. I wasn't able to connect. Thank you. And I started to figure it out. My students in '94, they were born mid-70s, plus minus, which meant that by the time they stopped wearing diapers, the Civil War was on. And by the time the Civil War was off again, they were basically students. And the struggle to talk to those students, to understand how could we talk about public space. And here I need to remind you that this was not a war like Second World War in Europe. In the Second World War in Europe, all nations came out of it stronger than before, more coherent, and with a stronger public space. But in Lebanon, it was an inward war, which eroded everything, having everything public, and shifting completely the perspective of what on earth is public space. Public space, that's a sniping corridor. A balcony is a very dangerous place to be. The most attractive space in the building is the stairwell. These kind of things makes you wonder, what about the urban dynamics in this? Yeah, I have the same problem as most people, having to do with Beirut. But anyway, I guess this more or less sums up the twist of Clausewitz on the understanding of public space. And we'll move on. The dynamics, the extraordinary urban dynamics in Beirut, covering 1 to 2 generations of its inhabitants, makes you wonder. It's not extraordinary at all. It's quite ordinary, in fact. So this covers just 1 generation. But the dynamics, one part of these dynamics is, of course, the urban sprawl that the coastal plain in Lebanon is covered by a more or less continuous fabric of human settlement. Beautiful or not, I'm not talking about that, but it's a carpet of it's a huge conurbation, which is also reflected in this map of attacks from this summer. And this means that what was targeted was infrastructure, basically. Infrastructure in this map will show you that this shows more than 94 roads and 70 bridges were bombed. This is in an area which covers about 70% of the Lebanese population. This red line is then the spine of transportations, which in terms of infrastructure is the backbone of 70% of the population. This spine was hammered by more than 100 attacks on bridges and roads here. This means that this conurbation, this urban structure, was divided into very small pieces, effectively, in terms of interaction and infrastructure. Actually, by doing so, this is the modern equivalent to the siege, which we also saw back in '96 when Israel attacked Beirut, because the first thing they did was not to cross the urban walls, it was to black out the mobile telephone network, then to close the entrance to the airport, and then starting to take out exactly infrastructural nodes. So I think we may assume that the siege in modern times is dismantling infrastructure. Now, after the last war, this summer, one of the things that have been proposed and been offered to the Lebanese authorities is, is a Coast Guard service. This Coast Guard service is intended to and will hopefully produce that a sort of offshore public space along the coast, allowing fishermen to be able to enter the sea and allowing boats to enter this public space. So this proposal is about shifting the backbone of infrastructure from the coastal highway to an offshore boat line. Doing that with modern speedboats, it's possible to cover the distance from Tripoli to Tyre with the fastest boats in less than 2 hours. With the more regular high-speed boats, you'd need 3 hours, but still traveling from Tyre or Nakura to Beirut in less than 1.5 hours is not bad. It would be able to compete with most car traffic. So that might produce an offshore infrastructural corridor like this. Now, thinking about the siege, that might at least double the traffic capacity. It's a sort of a fluent soft structure which would be able, in times of crisis, for instance, the speedboat would be in international waters in less than half an hour from any point. It would be from Beirut to Cyprus in 2 hours. It would be able to return after a few hours, after a couple of days. And when we started researching this, okay, 2 minutes, okay. Let's see. Well, the thing is that providing this infrastructure would hopefully, I mean, playing back on the Phoenicians, I know there's a cultural problem of using public transport and especially of going offshore in Lebanon, but this is not Lebanese culture. It should be possible to revive it. And how to do this, to shift from an infrastructure to an extra structure, we would need to study the effects of a boat line on the development of the coastal cities, to study the financial basis needed for the operation of a boat line. Initially, we thought, okay, we need to find a boat and we need to find someone who can build harbors. We started to investigate, and very soon we found the people who were building these boats, and said, you don't need that. I mean, we have boats running all over the place down there. There are about 4 shipbuilders, one in Norway, one in Holland, Dames, and 2 others. But the thing is that you need someone to operate it, and you need a financial base to keep it running on a regular base. And then the technical needs in terms of harbors should be are very simple. But what we need to get into this is that you could see this as an extra structure being hooked on from the outside, feeding the urban development of the small coastal cities. Or you could see the small coastal cities needing this infrastructure in order to grow. So either way you turn the perspective, you need to understand this not as an ad hoc temporary venture, which happens every time you have a war. In Lebanon, you have Norwegian boats running guns, refugees, weapons, smuggling, all the time, also in July and August. Boats from this pillar, but with a regular basis, they can become an infrastructure. Thank you.